Mina damer och herrar, ladies and gentlemen, ännu en stor applåd för Gott Motion från Kulturskolan i Göteborg. Tusen tack, så fantastiskt härligt. Och varmt välkomna till alla er hit till Svenska mässan idag och till utdelningen av Göteborgspriset för hållbar utveckling. Ett internationellt pris som delats ut varje år de senaste 15 åren till personer eller organisationer som gjort en betydande insats för en hållbar framtid. Och bland pristagarna är till exempel Kofi Annan, Al Gore, Margot Wallström, viktiga förebilder som har gått från ord till handling. Prissumman är på hela 1 miljon kronor. Mycket för att manifestera att det är viktigt att arbeta för en ljusare framtid, och det är möjligt. Pristagarna kommer från hela världen och väldigt snart ska ni få träffa årets pristagare. Men först så skulle jag vilja bli lite allvarlig och göra er uppmärksamma på en händelse som sker här idag i Göteborg. Idag begravs nämligen Göran Johansson, som inte bara var en folkkär och färgstark politiker vars hjärta verkligen slog för Göteborg. Han var också en av initiativtagarna till det här priset, till Göteborgspriset för hållbar utveckling. Och jag skulle vilja att vi tar bara en liten stund där vi i tysthet tänker på honom, tänker på det han har gjort för Göteborg och vad han har gjort för det här priset. Tack för era tankar och tack till Göran Johansson. Och efter denna svenska inledning så tänker jag fortsätta på engelska och säga: Ladies and gentlemen, honorable guests, students and teachers. Today, the Gothenburg Award for Sustainable Development will be given for the 15th time to people who through their work in some way or another, national or international, is making a significant difference in the work for a sustainable future. My name is Ann Landberg, and I'm really proud to be your host through this day. Some of you may recognize me from a television show called Antikrundan. It's the Swedish version of the Antiques Roadshow, where we look upon antique objects like tables, bureaus, chairs, furniture that were made for maybe 200 or 300 years ago, and that has since then been used and recycled, sold and bought. And I think that the Antiques Roadshow and the Antiques branch is a good example of recycling and sustainability for the future. And those issues are issues I care a lot about, and that's one of the reasons why I am your host today. We have a theme for this award, and the 2014 theme is Transformative Leadership for Global Business. And the program for today is divided into 2 parts. First, we'll hear a seminar on leading change for sustainability. And after that, we will take a 30 minutes coffee break. And then we will go on with the actual award ceremony. So, first of all, I would like to welcome the mayor and the chairwoman of the Gothenburg Award Committee, Anneli Hultén. thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And I know you are going to attend Göran's funeral later on, but we're so glad that you could come here first. I would like to ask you, why was it important for the city of Gothenburg to institute an award for sustainable development?
I think we should underline that this is not an award just from the city of Gothenburg. It's an award from the society of Gothenburg and also the region of Västra Götaland. And I think by saying that, I'm saying that we can't do this alone. Not just one institution, not just one political institution. We need to do it together with the private sector, the universities, and the political institutions which we have. And I think the local level is one of the most important levels for making a change when it comes to sustainability.
But this is a great prize. I mean, it's 1 million crowns. It's really great people who had been awarded with this prize. So it's a huge prize for me.
It's a huge prize, and also that we want to show that you can make a difference. And all the persons or institutions who have had the award previous actually have made changes. So it's a positive award, that we all can do something, and together we can even do more.
That's wonderful. And what do you hope that this award will lead to in the future? What do you hope will come out of it?
Change, because that's necessary. We have quite complex times for the moment, and we need changes. But we need to do it in a positive approach. If we just show that this is going to be difficult, it's going to be troubles, people are not going to have something to dream about.
Thank you so much, and we will see you again later on during this award ceremony. Thank you so much. You can stay here with me.
Yeah.
Because, ladies and gentlemen and honorable guests, let me introduce to you our excellent host for today's seminar, Leading Change of Sustainability. A person that's well known for more than 20 years of dedicated work supporting companies, cities, NGOs, and the United Nations with development of sustainability strategies. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Alan Atkinson. It's an honor to meet you.
It's an honor to meet you, actually.
Thank you so much for being here.
My deep pleasure.
And this is actually the first time that you attend the Gothenburg Award for a Sustainable Development. What significance would you say that this prize have international?
Well, you know, I've begun talking about this award on Twitter and Facebook as something like the Nobel Prize for Sustainability, just to help other people understand how important I think it has become over the years.
And I said to Anneli, for me, when I got to know about this prize, wow, it's a huge prize, and I never heard about it before, but in the environmental area, they really know about this prize.
Well, when you named the winners, of course, we paid close attention. Kofi Annan, Al Gore, Margot Wallström. These are, of course, big names in our field. But more importantly, I think what this award is doing is helping to put sustainability on the map and at the level where it needs to be. These people need to be more well-known and appreciated for the work that they do.
It puts sustainability on the agenda.
Exactly. And I think the jury, I must say, has done a fantastic job of finding and selecting honorable winners.
And when you talk about that, I have to ask you, if somebody 10 years ago would have said to you that the CEO of a company like Unilever would be awarded with a sustainability prize, how would you have reacted?
Well, I would have said, you know, finally, I guess, because people in our field have been saying for many years that business needs to lead this transition, that we don't get a sustainable world without businesses doing things very differently. So it's about time.
Well, thank you very much for being here. And now I will leave the stage to you. We will leave the stage to you. And we're really looking forward, right, Anneli, to listen to your seminar. So please, the stage is all yours.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Thank you very much. So, good morning, Gothenburg. And are you ready for an inspiring day? Yes, good, because that's what you definitely have got in store. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we would all agree that achieving a sustainable world requires nothing less than transformation. And transformation requires leadership. Now, many of us, indeed I would go so far as to say all of us, at some point in our lives, have a leadership role to play if we're going to achieve the dream of sustainable development and make it a reality. So for the next hour, we're going to be digging into some of the big questions around leadership, sustainability, and transformational change. We'll be joined by a panel of leaders who have distinguished themselves in their respective fields by taking on those challenges, and more importantly, by leading and inspiring thousands of other people to take them on and to make them part of their normal work. But for the first half hour, we have the opportunity to get to know, on a more personal level, our award winner. So I would like to invite onto the stage for the first time, but not the last time, the CEO of Unilever, the winner of the Gothenburg Award for Sustainable Development in 2014, Mr. Paul Polman. So, Paul, you know when somebody wins a gold medal on the sports channels, the first question they're always asked is, how does it feel?
A little overwhelming, but certainly a big honor. So, thanks for...
Well, congratulations on this award. First, you've won a lot of awards, actually, in sustainability-related issues. I wondered if you have a special cabinet at home where you display these.
No, I think having the fortune to lead a great company like I do, in this case Unilever now for the last 6 years already, I always remind people that the average life of a CEO is about 4.5 years right now. My wife was very disappointed when I stayed on after the 4.5 years. but leading a company like this for 6 years obviously is a great honor, and I think what you see there is a recognition of what the company does. More than anything else.
Very good. Now, when we talked earlier, you noted that you don't really like to talk about yourself.
Not really.
But I think that there are a lot of people who would like to get to know you a little bit. Is that right? Yeah. So we'll be talking a little bit about personal issues, but then we'll talk about your company and then about your views on what's going on in the world today on sustainability. Paul, you grew up in the Netherlands. You live in the UK. You run a global company. How do you relate to your nationality now? What does it mean to you to be Dutch?
Well, I think you always go back to your roots one way or another. I left the Netherlands in '77, so I've actually lived more outside of the Netherlands than in the Netherlands. But you always, you know, when the Dutch sort of get close to the soccer finals, you become excited. So I think that is still the case for myself as well. But I married my wife, who is American. We moved around basically to many countries, many continents, and you feel a little bit more global citizen, perhaps. I've also learned in the job that I'm doing today, it's better not to support one team or another, because it's better to stay a little bit above that. But, you know, seriously, you always go back to your roots a little bit, because most of the things that make who you are probably things that happen to you in these formative years when you were, in my case, in the Netherlands. It could have been anywhere else, and undoubtedly has played a part on becoming who you are. And
the Netherlands has been a global leader on sustainability since the early days.
We like to think so, but unfortunately we are not. So I would respectfully disagree, and we're working hard to bring a little bit more sense to that system. Because I think they could be doing so much more. But we have a polder model that might not be very different from yours, where there is a consensus-seeking culture. But in many cases, it also results in slow moving. And in this case, we're up against a little bit of a deadline that requires a little bit more activity. For example, in the area of sustainable energy, for example, the Dutch are starting to lag behind. And one of the reasons we created the Dutch Sustainable Growth Coalition, just like you've done here with the Leaders for Sustainable Development under the SIDA chairmanship, is to get more of a group of forward-thinking businesses to help governments push the boundaries a little bit, and that's equally needed there.
So let's talk about your career. You began as a cost analyst. You've worked for a number of companies along the way. I'm curious, when you started that career, did you imagine or set your sights on becoming CEO someday?
No, I've never, it sounds terrible, but I've never, and my chairman is here, Michael Tveskov, is also very fortunate to have him as a chairman, and it's terrible to tell him that in front of, but I never really planned my life that much, and I still don't. I just believe in a little bit the philosophy of creating opportunities. When I was young, I wanted to be a priest, and went actually to a seminary and studied for a while, and then I discovered there were better things in life, so broadened a little bit my horizon. And then I wanted to be a doctor, actually, and the Dutch have a, fortunately education is free, otherwise I wouldn't be sitting here, but at that time the government would assign a certain number of slots, and we have what we call a numerus clausus or a numerus fixus, which is call it a lottery system, and unfortunately I didn't get into that direction, so my father reminded me that at one point in time I had to earn a living. And, you know, you do law, you do economics, and that's how I ended up actually in studying business. After 3 or 4 years in Europe, I saw that most of the books in the Netherlands, at least, were in English. MBA programs were coming up in the US, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do, so I thought I might as well go there, and that's how I ended up in the US at that time.
Okay.
And from there, you know, we created the opportunities.
Just following your nose as it
Well,
went.
I call it creating the opportunities. You try to create many opportunities in life. You try to make many contacts, many connections, be involved in many things, and then you follow your passion. I think that's important. And you don't look back and where that passion leads you to. I've never asked for a job, never asked for a promotion, never asked for a salary increase for that matter. I just think you just follow your passion and you'll be happy, because it allows you to put your values and your life in sync with all the other things that you have to take care of around you. Makes you a more stable or happier person to do what you want to do.
Speaking of values, you lead a very large organization. Do you have a leadership philosophy? Is that something you reflect about, how to lead?
First of all, I don't think that because you're a CEO, all of a sudden you're a leader or something. So I don't think it is linked to a level in hierarchy in a company. I think everybody that touches someone positively is a leader. I have a fairly broad definition of leadership. When I see people volunteering now, basically medical staff, to go to West Africa to fight Ebola at the risk of their own lives, or when they come back, we lock them up, like, thank you for what you've done. If you think about it, those are real leaders. As I go around the world, or I see people teaching in schools, usually at no salary, we work a lot, my wife and I, with the officially impaired, and I see people working with the blind or deaf-blind and giving basically their life to others. So those are real leaders. I think leaders are people that put the interest of others ahead of their own. They find themselves basically by losing themselves in the service to others. And that, to me, is good leadership. So we actually learn more in the positions that we're sitting, because we're very fortunate to be exposed to many people. We learn more from others in terms of shaping our own leadership style than perhaps we are leaders ourselves.
That leads me to this next question, because you were talking about steps that you've taken along the way. And I'm curious, when you look back, is there a moment, a person, an event where you could say, that really shaped me or influenced the direction of my career, so that eventually I would take leadership on sustainability issues, on these issues that we're here to celebrate now?
Well, I think let me think. I think there are always things that are happening in your life that are crucible experiences that sort of stay with you and form who you are, for the good or for the bad. And I think it's an accumulation of things. It's never one thing. I really proved that I could punch above my weight when I married my wife, so that gave me a lot of confidence.
Is she here today?
She's here today, so I thought I'd throw that one in.
You just won a few points.
I won a few points, and I can come home a few times a little bit later than I promised her. Yeah. But you know, I never realized when I was born in 1956, I thought that was a long long time after the Second World War. The older I get, the more I notice how close that was to the Second World War. My father was born in 1925, and he unfortunately passed on fairly early, or too early, but he got totally cut off by this Second World War. Couldn't go to school, really, because of his age. And he spent all his time working day and night, factory job, climbed himself up, to be sure that his 6 children would be better than would have a better opportunity. It was very important for him that we would go to school. Very important for him that there was peace in Europe. Very important to him that he could dedicate his time to making others better. And I think that philosophy we've lost a little bit. So I'm very grateful to him. And in fact, the longer he's not there, the more you appreciate it, strangely enough. And they've always put that very forward. Then you have things in life that might happen to you at different points in time that I think form you as well. I had a fortune to work in Newcastle in the north of England for a while, where I saw for the first time, because of shipbuilding, steel and coal having become obsolete in some sense, I saw for the first time second generation people being unemployed. Girls of 13, 14 years old, the only thing they could get was a baby, basically making their situations worse, or whatever it was. So it really pulled me into some broader things, and I think it helped form you. I was unfortunately in Mumbai in the Taj Mahal when it got stormed, and we were stuck there, and we went through that experience, and it puts a different value on your life and on the goodness of people, basically, when you see that afterwards. I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro with 8 blind friends, and we got with 6 of them to the top, the first blind African, and you saw how those people with limited abilities to some sense had enormous abilities in other senses, and it makes you a little bit more appreciative of who you are, perhaps a little bit more humble, because at the end, to come back to leadership, I think at the end of the day, it's first and foremost more about being a human being than anything else.
You know, this theme of looking to your elders, your forebears, mentors seems to be important. And I read actually that you, when you first were named CEO, or very early, you spent the night in the house of the founder of Unilever, William Lever, with your, oh good.
So just for the record.
Just for the record. Why did you do that?
You know, the first, Michael as a chairman made a decision, a courageous decision, to, for the first time in the history of a company that has always been enormously successful to create their internal talent, has enormous values to build an institution like that. For the first time, there was a need for different reasons to go outside and bring in a CEO from a different company. And I happened to be that CEO. I'm sure that would have been better than other people, but that honor fell to me. And it was very clear to me already then that having worked for what some people might consider competing companies, that the first reaction was probably they're bringing in the Trojan horse type thing, you know. And instead of me expecting being CEO that the people would respect me, I thought it's really up to me to prove that that I can be accepted by them. And I spent a lot of time, fortunately, I had a few months before I took the job. I spent a lot of time studying the history of the company. If you look at Jim Collins' book, From Good to Great, he talks about nurturing the core before you stimulate progress. It was no doubt to many people that this company needed to change because the world around us was changing very fast. But before you make change, you really have to try to understand what the values were or are that make this company tick. And no better way to do that symbolically than actually a place where many people had not even been or had not been for a long time, which was Port Sunlight, where Lord Lever started. It happens to be that when he started was Victorian Britain in the end of the 19th century. 1 out of 2 babies wouldn't make it past year 1 either for the reasons of cholera and enormous hygiene issues in those days. So he invented a bar soap. Sunlight soap, the second soap he invented was called Lifebuoy. Interestingly, he called it Lifebuoy. But we had forgotten about all these things. But he was basically there to serve society, very successful at it. He built Port Sunlight, a city for his workers, before he really had the factory going. And that was basically the history of his life. Always on the brink of bankruptcy, great visionary, but always putting the things in place to the service of society. And I thought it would be very symbolic to have our first management meeting there and go back to these values and live these values a little better, and no better way to do that than being there. Now, he was a little bit of a strange man. He never slept inside.
I also heard the major complaint was that about Port Sunlight, this home place for the workers, was that he didn't build a pub.
He didn't do?
There was no pub.
Oh, no, he was very, no, he was, well, it's a little exaggerated because he had some community centers, etc. But in those days, it was indeed, you know, everything was taken care of. He had, he would really take care of people's full lives, but there were counterparties, and some of these counterparties in those days were obviously being very focused on work, being very focused on the family, very Calvinistic, if you want to some extent. And he would not have allowed some of these excesses, probably. But you have to see that in that period of time.
But when I was reading about him, I was struck by the parallels in how he envisioned that company and how you, in fact, have been leading it. Since then, although, and we're going to look at a picture in a minute, you have brought rather significant change to the company. You've maybe gone back to the roots.
Or gone back to the roots, perhaps, more than anything. But you know, he already was talking then about enlightened capitalism and shared values in the way that Michael Porter has introduced it, or reintroduced it again, or others. He understood very well that the purpose of business was to put it to the service of society. And if you would focus on that and do that well, shareholders would benefit as well. Now, don't forget, in those days, there were no shareholders, and nor did he create the company for the quarterly reporting or for his own well-being. He was solemnly focused on making this an institution that was built to last and not built to sell. And he operated it as such. Then a lot of things happened around us that put pressures on us. But I think that these basic values of focusing your business on serving society for the long term, taking care of the communities in which you operate, high levels of integrity, etc., are basically values that we want to live our lives with. And there is no difference to me between the way a company should function and the way we should function. If you talk about being successful in companies or leadership, or I always say that people that can marry their own values that they have in their lives with the values that they bring to work, they will be very successful because they don't have to be different people. Too often now you get mental stress, you get people stress and all the other things because people have one set of values at home or in their private circle, and then they come to work and they have to express other sets of values that they actually don't feel comfortable with. So they have to wear a mask or be someone else. That's not a recipe for leadership. That's not a recipe of being successful. So I've always been very fortunate. And what for me is the most important thing is to be able to work in an environment where your values and differences are appreciated. And I happen to be in a company that tries to do that.
And I know from the data that you've succeeded very well with your workers as well. But let's talk a little bit now about your business philosophy. And could we put the first picture on the wall? The thing that really caught my attention about Unilever was this, the Sustainable Living Plan, and this iconic graph that now thousands of sustainability consultants have been showing this graph around the world.
I should have trademarked it.
Probably. So what I wanted to ask you was, where did this come from? How did the idea emerge?
Well, we were having a breakfast this morning, and I saw Björn Stixon. Björn was the head of the World Business Council, and Björn already said something very profound in a very simple sentence, that business cannot succeed in societies that fail. And that was really Björn who said that. That has become a famous sentence that is now echoed around the world. I think in the crisis of 2007, 2008, we saw that the current system of capitalism had lifted enormous amounts of people out of poverty. But we also started to realize all of a sudden that came at an enormous price. Overconsumption, government debt, private debt, leaving too many people behind. So despite this enormous wealth that was created, this is still a world where 1 billion people go to bed hungry, not knowing if they wake up the next day. This is still a world where 2.5 billion people don't have access to clean drinking water or basic hygiene. And so I could go on like this, but I thought, isn't it time that we really look at business and the role of business, which has become too much focus on the shareholder primacy, in terms of what it really is meant to be and how it should be done, going back to the roots of our company. So we created what we called this Unilever Sustainable Living Plan, which is what this graph refers to. There is no doubt that a lot of people still need to be lifted out of poverty, especially in the emerging markets. there is no doubt as a result that there will be an enormous demand on consumption. World population will still grow 30%. Consumption probably will grow 300%. The reality is that we are already living off finite planets. WWF is saying we're already living off 1.5 planet. We're using more resources than we can afford to use. The Stockholm Resilience Institute, John Rockström, talks about that eloquently. So we have to, it's not anymore good enough to be less bad or to be a little CSR, that you feel that you're making a slight contribution. Business now really has to make a positive contribution towards solving these problems. It has come to that point. If you make these positive contributions, you see an enormous opportunity for your business, so it's a great strategy, but you also see an enormous acceptance of society by what you're doing, instead of a rejection, which is currently happening. So we put a very simple model out there.
When you say we, I mean, who?
We as the company.
Did somebody draw this on a napkin or a whiteboard? Or?
Well, we as the combination of the history of the company and its values that have been built, that culminates in something that you try to make bigger, which is, you know, our job is not to say we change the company. Our job is basically to say we make the company a little better or stronger so that when we leave, it has a longer life. So make the values a little bit stronger. So I could have never done this with our leadership team were it not for this history of the company, were it not for a lot of the values that are there. So we said, why don't we put a business model out there that doubles our turnover, which was absolutely a possibility, especially with our footprint in the emerging markets, helping to lift a lot of people out of poverty, double our turnover. But since we cannot afford anymore to use more resources, why don't we decouple that growth from resource use? Move to a totally neutral model, or actually a positive model, and at the same time improve the social impact. This is a world where growth is not even, where 85 of the richest people have the same wealth of the bottom 3.5 billion people. So how can we make a more equitable growth and a more sustainable growth? And that is basically what this model is about, and we call it the Unilever Sustainable Living Plan. Now, what is unique about this model is, instead of staying in your own shop and in your own travel, your factories, your offices, which is basically where the CSR space is, we took co-responsibility of the total value chain, from farm to fork, if you want to. And we said, we have to be co-responsible for solving issues in this total value chain. Now, no company of our size or magnitudes has made this statement or commitment of decoupling, of co-responsibility of the total value chain. And this is really what makes this model a little bit scary, without any doubt. You need a certain number of years to implement that, and you certainly can't do it alone. We were worried about it, also with the board. We had 50 targets, and we want to be held accountable. It's far more transparency. Are you sticking out your neck too much? What does it mean if you miss a target? But the fact that we said we don't have all the answers, the fact that we said we need to work in partnership, the fact that we took co-responsibility of a total value chain, I think made us a little bit more human, and it also made us more of a company that was being accepted to be included in some of these projects that we're working on.
Your board shouldn't be complaining over that period that you've been CEO. The stock prices performed mostly very nicely. But I'm curious about how this model, how it works. And when I say how it works, how has it changed the way that you manage and your management team manage the company in practical terms?
Well, the first thing, from a very decentralized organization, because we were very much a country-run organization, we all of a sudden put this purpose out there that is actually a very resonating purpose of doubling, but decoupling and increasing a social impact. That has galvanized an enormous amount of energy in the organization. So you need to set, in that sense, the tone from the top, what we want to do. Then behind that, setting clear targets. We've set about 50 targets. But some targets that might be strange to companies. All of our agriculturally sourced materials being sustainable. Creating 5 million more livelihoods, jobs in our value chain. Building 400,000 toilets with a brand like Domestos fighting open defecation. Reaching 1 billion people more, improving their health and well-being. Things like hand washing with bar soap, etc. So we have targets that go beyond just profits and volume. These targets we distribute throughout the company, hold people accountable, put activity systems and capabilities in place.
So it's normal management, but with different goals.
Oh, absolutely, but it's management by purpose. And I think that purpose is sometimes missing, you know, in some industries or in some companies. And if that purpose is high enough, I think it is already a great catalyzer for change.
Let's put the next picture up on the screen. I wanted to get your reaction to this. This was published in The Economist, data about how global sustainability experts perceive companies that are leading on sustainability. The headline was actually by a mile, because in the perception of experts, your company is just so far ahead of the pack. What do you make of this?
Well, one thing my father always said was, if you want to have a lot of people under you, you know, you could become a tender in a graveyard, but nobody is smiling. And so the key thing is, it worries me to some extent, because the key thing is you need to be able to get people to come with you. If Unilever does it alone, we are such a small pimple, you know. If we don't galvanize this change on a broader scale, we still miss the point here. So we are looking very much on more and more so, how can you use the size and scale of a company like Unilever to get more transformative impact? Now, this is one survey. And obviously, hopefully, it rallies other companies as well to step up to the plate, which happens with these things. There are other surveys where we see less of a difference. We're #1 in the Dow Jones Sustainability Index, and we're proud of that, but there are many companies that are there. And there are other surveys out there that sometimes put us in second, third, or lower place. I think what is good is that people are starting to measure where impacts are, so that it becomes a little bit more of a fact-based discussion, and that we can compare with each other and benchmark. The reality is that we're getting to a situation in the world where more and more CEOs realize that things need to change. I was at the Climate Summit in New York not long ago, and there were 150 CEOs. And actually half of them were American CEOs. And this was a climate summit. You would not have seen that you know, a few years ago. The World Bank put out a statement at that time on calling for a price on carbon. We got 1,000 companies to sign that. You would not have seen that several years ago. Now, many of them were members of the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, which is a body...
Which you chair, by the way.
Which I chair right now, which Björn has basically built as president, and is now Peter Bakker. And we have 200 of the more progressive, in the US you have to use the word forward-thinking companies that are members, and we're trying to move the boundaries there. And so what you've created here with CDAO, the Leaders on Sustainable Development group, was a group of 20 or 30 companies, is that type of initiative that you need to jointly move forward. I firmly believe in that.
You know, if anybody has shown us that sustainability is about more than just, say, climate change, it's you. You've spoken out on sanitation issues, women's issues, but on the agenda. Are you optimistic that we're going to get a global deal in Paris next year? Uh-oh.
No. I have to just think about how I answer. I'm an optimist inherently, because I believe firmly that it's too late to be a pessimist. But I think we have to work at it.
I think that deserved some underscoring.
Well, but we have to work on it, because this is a challenging task to get 190 plus countries to sit there. And this is an intergovernmental process, as you well know. And Christiana Figueres is doing an outstanding job. But it is now in the hands of the politicians. And whilst I am the first one to support the politicians and certainly not criticize them, it has become a very difficult job. And anytime we bring 190 people in the room, like we saw in Rio with the Rio +20, we run the risk that it drifts down again to the lowest common denominator. So what we are concerned about, and I'll be in Peru in a few weeks' time, and we're working on a plan, what we call the Road to Paris, that we get enough people out there to step up to the plate. And business, when it gets to the total issue of climate change, is too overwhelming for many business people to participate in, and yet the voice of business is more important now than ever. So with the World Business Council and others, we're rallying. The other thing we're trying to do is get the world citizens to speak up, because politicians are more sensitive to that, especially the young people, which is where it gives me hope.
So business is becoming a lobby organization to get citizens to become active?
Oh, I think we have to be part of creating the movement, I call it. Our companies are becoming outside-in companies, as you really believe that you're to the service. But, so there's a guy called Kevin Hall. He did these 8 concerts and Africa concerts and Bonos and all that. He's a producer in California, and I've spent some time with him. We're trying to get 1 billion people to sign. 1 billion people to sign.
1 billion people.
Yeah, 1 billion people. Now, he thought it was impossible, and I told him it's not at all. When we run Dove sketches, you know, Dove, one of our brands is called Dove, which stands for women's self-esteem, inner beauty, more important than, you know, than just talking about your body the whole time.
Talk to your daughter before the beauty industry does.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Dove is a great brand doing very well. So we put one of these YouTube videos came out, which is called Dove Sketches. And talking about that, and it resonated because 275 million women across the world have seen this, spending 3 to 4 minutes of their precious time. So there you have nearly 300 million people. So I've come to believe that you can get movements now of 1 billion people, and they're happening. Earth Day or Peace One Day or other movements I can talk about. You rapidly get millions of people to connect. So wouldn't it be right if we get 1 billion people of this world to put a signature down that they want an agreement? Now, I'm also positive on the political front because you saw the agreement with China and the US. The US basically, China peaking at 2030, the US by 2025 calling for a 25 to 28% reduction. You know we need to be totally net climate neutral by more or less 2070, 2071. I think that the bigger nations, China, the US, now obviously India is important, they have to be part of that agreement, and they are putting out some pretty forward-thinking targets. Some people might disagree, but it's more than we could have ever thought of realistically. You saw the EU, so we have to work on the EU that they stick to their targets, and I think we could be heading towards an agreement that I would not call ambitious enough, but I would certainly look for something, and that's why I was careful answering it, something that is better than we've seen before and that perhaps most people thought would be possible.
Paul, you know, my last question before we invite our panel onto the stage was going to be what you're most passionate about right now, but I have the feeling that you're passionate about everything that you're working on.
No, not really, because you know, there's only so many hours in the day, so you do have to make choices. And obviously, with my chairman here, I have to think what I'm answering here. But let me answer it differently. You know, all of us here, and myself certainly would fit that description, that we belong to probably the 2% of the world population that can do what they want. I'm now sitting here in a tremendous environment. I can work for the company I like to work for, financially independent. We could change jobs or move to other countries if we'd like to. But that's unfortunately the case only for 2% of the world population, at most. And still the majority of the world population cannot be here because, or cannot take your price because they're simply too hungry, or they haven't had access to education, or they didn't make it past the age of 5 for simple reasons of sanitation or hygiene. And I firmly believe that if you belong to that 2%, then you really should devote your task and get your energy of putting that to the service of the other 98%. And I'm fortunate enough to sit here because I represent Unilever that has a scale and impact that probably people take more notice of. But as I said at the beginning of this talk, there are many others that have taken that same philosophy. So I get my energy out of being sure that others succeed, to be honest.
I think we can stop our conversation there, and I think we should give this man a big round of applause. Stay put. I think we all have a good sense now of why the jury selected Paul Polman for this award. But now we're going to be joined by a distinguished panel, and each of the individuals on this panel has distinguished herself or himself. You know, I think we need hen-self in English, don't you? In sectors that range from industry to regional government, international development, it's a broad and diverse selection. Each of them also has a reputation for speaking their mind, for saying what they think, for taking brave decisions. So as they come up to the stage, I'd like to ask you to welcome them with a round of applause so that they feel comfortable, because then I'm going to ask them a very difficult question. kind of a sustainability riddle. So let's start. First, I'd like to invite Charlotte Petri Gornicka to the stage, please. Charlotte, you're the director of the Swedish International Agency for Cooperation, Development Cooperation. You were previously the Secretary General of Save the Children internationally. And you've been dealing with this issue of the development side of sustainable development for a long time. So you get to answer the riddle first. So it seems that the global economy has to keep growing to meet the needs of the poor, to meet the aspirations of a growing population. At the same time, as Paul noted, we have clear scientific evidence that the Earth has firm limits. We're beyond a lot of those limits. So how can these two things actually be reconciled? The need to grow and the need to stay within a very limited and small planet.
So now it's time to win the award next year, or? I think, first of all, we just need to stop debating the sense of urgency. As been said, I mean, in a much more positive way than I did. And we just have to realize the challenges there. The planetary boundaries, we have, we need to take them for real. But I also think that it's important for us development people that used to talk about poverty eradication on one hand, and then we went to another meeting discussing climate. That's just the old days. We just cannot continue to do that. Breaking the silos.
Got to break the silos.
That's
work
sustainability.
Together.
Work together, okay. And also spur innovation.
Very good. Thank you so much. Welcome to the stage.
Thank you.
Good. Now I would like to, yes, she did a good job. I hope the jury was paying close attention. Next, I'd like to invite Mr. Tom Johnston to the stage.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Very good. Tom, you're the CEO of SKF, or SKF as we say here in Sweden. You're from Scotland.
Yep.
You've been in that job in your job at SKF in different positions for 38 years now.
Yep.
So you have a lot of experience. I'm hoping you can answer this riddle. Planetary limits, the need to grow, how do we balance them?
I think, as you say, it is the riddle we've got to face. And for me, I think we've got to focus much more heavily on energy efficiency. And I think we, in the more developed world, have to significantly reduce our energy consumption. And it's possible. There are many, many energy efficient solutions out there that can do that. And we've got to create the space for the more developing countries to grow into, so that we at least stay neutral and hopefully go less.
Super efficiency, create space for others.
And the technologies are out there, and there are companies that are proving that every day. SKF's one of them.
That's a good answer. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Hi.
Next we have Karin Forsicke. Please come to the stage. Welcome, Karin.
We get 3 seats for all of us. We're going to get very close together.
Karin is a long-time leader in the finance sector. You've been the CEO of the Carnegie Investment Bank. You sit on numerous boards. You've advised the Swedish Ministry of Finance. So from a financial perspective, how do we reconcile these two seemingly impossible things to reconcile, growth and limits?
Well, I think Paul expressed everything quite eloquently earlier, but the truth is we have to do both. We have to continue growth, and we have to reduce the consumption of natural resources. And I think in modern sort of economics, it's called decoupling. And Tim Jackson has written a very good book on the subject, if you want to...
Prosperity without growth, he called it.
Exactly. And to put it in simple words, it really is about we have to grow, but it's about how we reduce the dependency on natural resources. It's decoupling GDP growth from natural resource consumption. And in practical terms, what it means is we have to do things differently. All of us have to do things differently. And a simple example is, rather than flying to a business meeting once a week, fly once a month and do 3 by video instead. Or things like, rather than throwing out your kitchen that you just bought a new house with it in, and it's perfectly fine, but you don't like the color, do something else. Fix it or sell it.
Yeah.
Little things.
Or watch An's program and buy something nice on Antikrundan.
Well, I was thinking about that, For the first time, it felt quite good to be an antiquity standing up here. Yeah.
Thank you. Very nice. Thank you, Ann. And the last but certainly not least, Ann-Sophie Lodin, please come to the stage. Ann-Sophie has been since 2011, the director of, well, you're the director of everything here, in a way, Västergötland. So for you, this notion of growth and limits is not theoretical. You're running a political and a program that actually drives that agenda. So how have you managed to reconcile these two things?
We need to do that, and I also think that we need to take actions on sustainable growth, and then always focus on the possibilities. What can we actually do as individuals, but also as organizations or companies that we run?
Very good. Thank you and welcome. Welcome to our whole panel. So, panelists, we've got about 20, 25 minutes, and in that time we need to solve all the problems in the world. And we also have to have a deep and probing conversation on leadership with each of you. So what that means is please think Twitter. So let's keep our conversation brisk and short. And we'll do, first I'd like to ask each of you a question. Harlotte, we'll start with you. I know you have strong opinions on the role of business and development, and you recently convened, as Paul mentioned, CEOs to work with you. Why did you do that? What was the point?
Well, the point was that I know that there is a business opportunity in solving the world's problem. And we wanted to inspire and challenge the opportunity in working together. And you know how we did that? We just said, are we actually going to allow Paul Polman to be the only one on stage? Because I met Paul Polman, I saw you in the development field all the time, and that's a positive thing. But I thought that Swedish values and Swedish leadership, both the way we do development and how companies are being talked about, like Volvo values, IKEA values, and so on, that there was kind of an expectation out there that Sweden should take the lead. And if we could then take a lead around sustainability and leadership, and not around we are leaders in development, we are leaders there and there, let's lead for the challenge that we jointly need to solve. And they wanted that.
Good. Tom Johnston, did you go to the meeting?
No, but our team were there.
Your team were represented there.
Yep.
Good. Tom, your company, I was very pleased to learn, was working on sustainability very early. You began integrating sustainability into your annual reporting already in 2004.
Yep.
So some years ahead of Paul, actually. So what drove you to do that? Did you have a personal aha moment?
We saw actually back in 2004 that it made good business sense. It really was. Sustainability has always been something in SKF. It's right from our foundation. It was in our values the same as you had in Unilever. But we saw it was a real business opportunity for us in 2004 to integrate all the dimensions, not just the environmental, but the community, but the employee part into it. It would give us a competitive advantage in the marketplace, but also with our customers and distributors.
It became part of your business model
already.
Became
part, and I think that's an important part of it, and I think that's what Paul's done. Yes. If you don't integrate it into your business, if you don't make it a core part of your guiding light of how you do things, it will be a cost that can be cut at some point in time. Yes. And I think the aha moment for me, actually, from an environmental viewpoint, was attending a seminar at Chalmers run by Christian Azar in 2004. And Christian did a very good presentation, a very alarming presentation on prediction of what would happen from an environmental viewpoint. And from that, we formed a small group of young people in SKF to say, what can we do about this? And from that we came up with our strategy, which is called Beyond Zero, which is similar to what you were talking about, Paul, which was, on one side, how do we reduce the negative impact we have on the environment? At the same time, how do we bring products and solutions to our customers that improve the positive impact, help them reduce their negative impact? And we combined these two, and we launched it to the organisation in 2005.
And I think that you just made John Holmberg from Chalmers University very happy by noting that this was a key moment for you. Thanks, Tom. Karin Forsicke, you have a long career in the finance sector, from running the trading floor. You've been a trading floor manager. You've turned around bleeding companies to make them profitable. How is it that, now when we think about the finance sector, I have to say that we don't usually think sustainability immediately. So how is it that you have emerged as a strong spokesperson on just those issues?
Well, I mean, I think it's just the right thing to do. And I think, for me, I reject the notion that there is a conflict between doing good business sustainably and being profitable.
Agreed.
It's actually the other way around, and I think that's a misnomer out there that we need to change. It is actually the most financially beneficial way to run a business. It's about being sustainable. I also have some questions around sort of I get concerned about the word sustainability because I'm worried that labels very often get associated with fads. And I want to make sure it's something that just is business as usual. But how I got to it, I think it really comes from my core values and my childhood, a bit like Paul spoke about. Very strong values from home. My grandmother was a grower of flowers, Dutch tulips, vegetables and fruits. And she ran this business in a completely ecological manner. Not by design, but that was just the way they believed in doing good business. So I learned from a childhood that the importance of the ecosystem, the value of every little critter has in that system. And so I got that from when I was young. My grandmother was also a very successful businesswoman. She always sold her produce and flowers every day, sold out at the best prices.
She would have been a good award winner candidate, it sounds like.
Yes, she would have. But it was because of trust. People trusted the quality of her product. Yeah. That's what she had so that's what I was grown up with. Okay. Then if I move on so that's my core value. Second part of it is, I think it's experience. Having spent more than 30 years in financial services, and this is a very important industry. It's an industry, it's the oil in the machinery. For any well-being society, we need to have a strong financial system. I've unfortunately seen this industry from many different parts. It's also an industry that has destroyed more value than I think any other industry. I have seen the destruction of unsuccessful mergers and acquisitions. You know, the majority of them never deliver the value you think. Secondly, the number of socially completely useless products that's been sold to society by the industry. I mean, there's just value destruction that is hard to take.
I get it. You have a personal passion about waste and doing things the right way. Yeah.
So I think with that experience, coupled with my core values, and wanting the financial services industry to be an industry and a force for good. So I think that, and I take the third thing, which is I think is personal maturity. As you learn and you grow and you become more secure in your own values, you're also more safe in taking those difficult decisions, and you don't need to go along with the crowd. So I think it's those things. It's core values, it's experience and maturity. And to me, it's just the right thing to do.
Thank you, Karin. Very good. Ann-Sophie Lodin, you know, in some ways, yeah.
Very good.
Right. Ann-Sophie, in some ways, I think you run the most complicated business of the five people on the stage now. You are the leader for 50,000 employees working in healthcare, education, even the opera, for goodness sakes. How do you lead such a diverse group of people towards sustainability?
So what we have in Västra Götaland is a very clear vision. We want to create a good life for the inhabitants and the residents of Västra Götaland. And that, of course, includes very clearly sustainability, environment issues of different kinds. And I'm also very proud of our environment program that we have with clear goals, and we follow up this as in the same way as we do follow up financials. We have it in our annual reports, for instance. And I might have, even if it is a big organization, I might have an advantage compared to my colleagues here because my board consists of politicians, and the sustainability is very high up on the agenda. I don't need to sort of convince them to take this up. It's already there, and it's a part of my work, really, to take actions on this.
So you're a sign that this really has become mainstream here in the political life of Sweden, but you still are pushing hard, I know. I'm going to ask Paul now. Paul, you may know that Swedes, we like to hear what other people think about Sweden. So I'm just curious whether Sweden is a country that you have an opinion about when it comes to leadership and sustainability.
That's a terrible question.
I know. But people do want to know.
I know, but you could have warned me. The Dutch and the Swedes probably didn't start off on a good basis. In 1628, with King Adolphus, we gave you a ship that only went 1,800 meters.
Yes.
And then we quickly ran away, because in those days you probably got beheaded if you didn't deliver. but the relationships between our two countries are probably the longest ones, 400 years or so, and I don't think that's a coincidence. I think we have a lot in common. And if you look at the Swedes from the outside, and I'm not an expert at all, what you have built, you have found a way, your question on growth, for example, and how can we continue to grow in the finite planetary boundaries that we have, is by redefining growth. And you have redefined growth. You have looked at quality of education, quality of healthcare, quality of air, and you have created a GDP plus, if you want to. Just like Bhutan was trying to create its national happiness index, you happen to be amongst the top 5 countries that are ranked high for national happiness.
That makes me smile.
And yeah, the Dutch are slightly higher than you are, I may.
Oh.
The Norwegians, Danish, Swiss, Dutch, and then the Swedes. So you just made it in the top 5. But it is an honor to be on that list because you take care of a broader. There will always be issues in any society, but you take care of a broader definition of GDP. And then it's not just growth is not just using more stuff, because we just don't have it. So it's defining differently. I always say, as long as we define if we put more value on a dead tree than a tree that's alive, we're not going to solve the world's issues. Now, coming to Sweden, you are very well placed. You have the Resilience Center here, you have the Environmental Center here, you have the Water Center here. You started this, what's it called, the EAT initiative, or on the food, what is it called?
It's EAT initiative. It's
EAT
Norwegian,
initiative.
Swedish, but
yeah.
anyway.
So you have the EAT initiative.
And don't forget Chalmers and Gothenburg University.
Yeah, Cornulla was part with me of the high-level panel, Carlson, and then you sponsored the new climate economy report that we did with Nick Stern and under the leadership of Felipe Calderon on showing that you can grow in a climate-neutral environment. Sweden has, for me, always been on the foreground of pushing these boundaries. You're playing an incredibly proactive role in the Millennium Development Goals right now. You with your SIDA agency, what you've now created with a group of businesses. So I think you have an ecosystem. Then you have the companies, your companies, and I think the panel is a great testimony to that. Companies like IKEA, Ericsson, they are progressive or forward-thinking companies. And then you have a population that is actually most digitally connected population, highly educated population, and you need that. And sometimes changes take a little longer. But we are getting now to the point in the world that we cannot afford that time anymore. So even in Sweden, it took a long time. You've had times in history that you look back and say, how could we have done this? But you have now shown that you can grow responsibly. You're a country that since the mid-90s has grown 40–50% in GDP, but you've actually reduced your carbon by 30–40%. You're actually, like Denmark, have decoupled. You've done the Unilever Sustainable Living Plan in action. So you show it's possible, and as a result, I think you're punching above your weight. But with the Swedish modesty, because your modesty is built into your culture, you don't like to speak out sometimes as forcefully as you should. I work a lot with Jan Eliasson, because on the WASH program, Water, Sanitation, Hygiene, and Jan is one of your fellow citizens, Deputy Secretary General. And so he speaks out at the UN, and I have a lot of admiration. But I would like to see, personally, more Swedes on the global podium, because you have your credibility, you have your track record, you have your ecosystem around you, and you're actually showing that it can be done. So when I said the world is short of trees, we are short of trees, we're also short of leaders, because at the end of the day, it's people that make the difference. Sweden as a country does that, but you need more Björn Borgs to step up, or more Abbas on the global scene of the environmental side.
We have 4 people here. Maybe they'll be the ABBA of sustainability.
Very well said.
Yeah.
But given Swedish modesty, I have to ask the panel, do you think we're leaders on sustainability? Are we as far ahead as we need to be?
I think we are leaders, but I'm not saying that we are the only leaders. And that's, you have to have that mentality that you can be leading, but you lead with others. And if you argue, are we or are we not, and waiting to lead, that's not. Just do it. See yourself as a leader.
Karin, yeah, wow, you're getting a lot of response here.
That's a tweet response.
Yeah.
Karin.
Well, maybe I can be a little bit controversial here. I think Sweden is very good, but I don't think we're great. And I'm not saying I'm not sure anyone is great in the subject.
Exactly.
And I also would like to add a point. I think if you asked every person in the audience here today their definition of sustainability, I think you would get as many answers as there's people in this audience. And just as an example where I think yes, we're very good, but we're not great. I think diversity. and women.
You know, I was going to bring up this topic. Thank you, Karin. I mean, look at this panel. 3 women, 2 men. Unfortunately, this is not representative of the reality in the rest of the business world, where at least 80 of Sweden's largest companies don't even have a single woman in senior management. Is that a sustainability issue?
Yes.
I think that's what I was just trying to say. I think that is a sustainability issue. And I think that's an area where I think often Sweden, we have a better perception of ourselves than we actually are, and the reputation out there is greater than we are. And I'm not saying we're not good, we are good, but we can do a lot more. And I think diversity and gender is a serious sustainability issue, because that addresses groupthink and group behavior, and that's at the core of some of the problems we have.
What can we do about it?
But can I just come back into the earlier point about the different answers and definitions to sustainability? I think that is a key issue. If we're going to make a difference in the world, and we need to make that difference, we need to simplify sustainability that people understand what we mean by it and the different dimensions of it. In some ways, we talk sustainability, and many people put it only to the environment. It is much more than the environment. And one of the keys we found in our company was to make it understandable. We changed the word sustainability to SKF care and defined business care, environment care, employee care, community care, to make it understandable to our whole organisation, regardless of language, regardless of position in the company. And I think that's a major challenge. If we want to really drive it forward, we have to make it more understandable, and also what we as individuals can do to contribute towards it.
Make it very clear.
Yes.
So that's part of the leadership challenge. But Ann-Sophie, what kind of leaders do we need now to turn our worries about, say, diversity issues or climate change into reality? What are the characteristics of leadership that we need today?
I think we need responsible leaders that will take responsibility for this, but also that have the courage really to set the standards and the goals high, and then to inspire others to reach these goals. Because we cannot be sort of common. We need to point high up and set the goals high.
Raise the bar significantly.
Absolutely.
What else? What other qualities? Karin?
Well, I would like to say, I think one of the greatest assets this country has is something called trust. I think, and I don't think we really understand the value of that trust when you live here. You can just compare it to anything. Buy a house here compared to the US. Here is a 2-page formula you print off your computer. In the US, it's 5 lawyers, 2 accountants, and this much paperwork. That's the difference in trust. And I think that trust also permeates our whole society. I think it's something we can build on, and we could certainly make use of it and really become a leader in sustainability. But then we need to decide we want to be a leader, and that takes fire in the belly.
Fire in the belly.
And I think Paul said it very well. I think we are very modest in Sweden, and we, being a Scotsman in Sweden, we are very modest in Sweden. We don't stand up enough and really stand on the parapets and push for this, because we're doing a lot of good things here. We may not be great, but we're doing a lot of good things, and I think we should stand up and push it much, much more.
You know, one of the issues with sustainability is that we all know that time is running out.
Yeah.
That's true for our panel as well. So we have to live within our limit of time. So I'd like to bring one more question, then we'll have a closing. All of you are facing a lot of uncertainty as you deal with leadership, and uncertainty around the issues of sustainability. When you look out into your crystal ball as a leader, what are you most sort of concerned about or obsessed with? You can't sleep at night because you're thinking about that question. What would it be for you?
I think for me, I heard a quote when I was at a meeting, the Farm to Fork Summit in USA, that said, "We are the first generation to know about climate change and the last generation to do something about it." And I think that is a worrying factor, but I think it's also a huge opportunity for us if we stand up, if we address it. And I'm more optimistic that you are seeing it coming up the agenda. And I think the recent declaration by the US and China is a good step in the right direction. Now we need to take it from words to action, but I think it's becoming higher up the agenda, and I share Paul's, I'm optimistic as well, Paul, and I think that I share that for going forward to Paris.
But it's that urgency that Charlotte was talking about.
Yeah, and I wake up every morning thinking about how can we turn this skepticism between countries or business versus development. We cannot afford not to invest financial flows into development. We just need to understand that there's a win-win situation. And if people are questioning why we're in this with too much skepticism. This won't happen. And I really work hard to try to build trust for the common purpose. But it's difficult, so that keeps me really alert.
We need to accept where we are before we can go further.
Yes,
Ann-Sofie, what keeps you up at night?
I think it's very important for us to bring in the young people now that we have, sometimes without education or without a job. I think that is really important for us to bring them into work life and to try to take care of this generation, because they are our future, and we need them to be sustainable.
Speaking of the next generation, we have one last question, and then we have a surprise questioner for Paul. But just very quickly, again, tweet level, given that we are facing this challenge of urgency, what is it that most gives you hope that you can share with our audience today? I'll start with you, Ann-Sofie.
Yeah, I think when I can see the results, we have results, and we take step by step towards something better.
We can see that we've made progress.
Yeah, I think so.
That gives you hope. Me as well. Karin.
I think the direction of travel is clearly in one way, and I think it's going to speed up. I think our younger generation is going to push us to do that, and I would encourage you to continue to push. So I think that's my greatest hope, and I think the alternative to hope is pretty dismal. So it's just to be positive and support as much as you can.
I like Paul's one-liner. It's too late to be pessimistic.
Yeah, exactly.
Tom.
I think the younger generation definitely pushing, but I also think the fact that political leaders are starting to talk more about it.
The political change that you see.
It's starting to come.
Gives you hope. Charlotte.
When I see results that has emerged from investing in women, when I see that countries that have done that have, productivity goes up, women invest in children and family life, women invest in part of what we call sustainability. So when I see these coming results every day, it gives me hope.
Thank you. Paul, last word on this round. What gives you hope?
It's definitely the young, because if you look at outside of Europe and the US, that's where 80% of the world population will be, and we behave it, it's all here. But and if you look at that 80% of the world population, 50% is below 25 years old. And as I go around many universities, from Bosporus to Mexico City to Moscow, if you want to, or Jakarta, you see that they all understand that they are only 50% today, but they're 100% tomorrow. When we put out the website of the world we want for the Millennium Development Goals, we had over 1 million responses within 1 week from the young, and actually, surprisingly, mainly Africa. So I have great hope. And with networks like One Young World we were talking, or We Day, or the Global Shapers, the Ashoka Fellows, the Net Impact, where you have many young students, you can now galvanize and connect easily a few 100 million of these people. And they want to be part of it. It's their world above all. And I think what is the most enthusiastic thing is that in the next 15 years, to your point, we have absolutely the opportunity to irreversibly eradicate poverty in a more equitable and sustainable way. I want to be part of it. Or as a minimum, I don't want to come home and tell my kids I didn't even try. That's really where it boils down to.
Thank you very much.
I like that.
I'm really sorry to interrupt. Do you hear me? Yes, I'm really sorry to interrupt you, Alan, and the panel. But there has been a meeting here in Gothenburg about tomorrow, the future leaders of tomorrow. And the issue was sustainable leadership for the future. And what they all agreed on was that very shortly, it requires compassion, commitment, courage, and cooperation. And I brought with me from this meeting Soma Husseini, and she would like to ask Paul Polman a few questions, if that's okay.
Sure. Welcome, Soma. Paul, are you prepared to take a...
Always.
Yeah.
That's very good.
Hi, Paul. Hi, panel. We young people want you as leaders to engage more with us in working for sustainable development. Are you willing to do that? If so, how would you do it?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's wonderful you're here, because you followed the last question, so it could not be more appropriate. Young people should be part of this panel, so I'm delighted you're here. And as I said before, I spend a lot of time myself on trying to reach out to young, but enable them, connect the networks, making them part of the movements. I think you're very well placed, and I was just writing down your 4 points that you came out with, which actually goes also to the discussion of women and leadership. Purpose, you need purpose, and be driven by purpose, and young people have quite a purpose that we are sometimes surprised about. You need to be driven by the longer term, you have a longer term vision, and you need to be driven, as you said, by cooperation. You called it partnership or something. The good news I also have is that if you look at purpose, long-term, and partnership, these are values that actually are easy, they come easier to the female than to the male. So I'm not so worried about the issue of diversity. I think it's also going to be looking forward, the decade of the female. Interestingly, if you look at the biggest cooperation efforts that are happening in the World Food Programme, Earthring Cousins, Helen Clark on UNEP, Christiana Figueres on the climate change, and I could go on and on. The biggest efforts that are happening now that are going to make a difference in the world are already actually led by women. But having said that, our job is to be sure that in everything we do, like the UN Development Goals, the climate change agreements, which are now important, and some other things we're working on, that the young people have a seat at the table. Absolutely a must. Absolutely a must.
Soma, you had a follow-up question.
Thank you, yes. It's great that you as leaders are working for sustainable development, but we need more leaders like you. What are you doing to get more of your colleagues in leadership to follow your example?
Good question.
There are a lot of leaders, and I think you see a lot of them here on the panel, and undoubtedly a lot of them in the audience. So we need to celebrate more people who take courageous action, because the forces, when you have change, because we need to change, as you rightfully say, the forces against change, even if they're the minority, will always get the majority of the voice, because they are afraid that their model is obsolete, which you see with a lot of industries now that are carbon-based. They fight climate change.
Yes.
Or a political order, when they are in power, they want to stay in power. So forces of change are getting a lot of resistance. Newspapers dwell on that. So we have to create an environment where people can feel confident to be courageous. And as a result, we have to encourage people to do that, sometimes together, sometimes alone. But we try to, pull people down too much. So the more we can do, and I'm not saying this award, but the more we can do to create your organizations together, like the Leaders for Sustainable Development and others, to create these umbrellas, people will lift up. Because I believe inherently in the goodness of everybody. And we are running this world from a negative point of view. We should be running it from a positive point of view. Life would be wonderful for everybody.
Thank you so much. And thank you. What a really interesting panel discussion. You made me to go home and actually think about if there's a few things that you talked about here today. So thank you so much. Really, really nice.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now it's time for a coffee break. We take a 30-minute coffee break, and we see you back here 11:20. 11:20, you have to be here, because then we will go on with the actual award ceremony. So enjoy your coffee and be back soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much.